Hello my dear friends, you're in the Military Summary channel, and this video we're going to discuss the most important events that took place during the previous 12 hours. We have a lot of very interesting updates, so let's start. And we have so many interesting updates that Ukrainians began panic. The Ukrainian sources reported that it's time to prepare the defense along the river of Dnipro and the city of Dnipro. The Dnipropetrovsk region needs to be prepared for defense today. That was stated by the deputy commander of the 3rd Assault Brigade Zhorin. Today, the military said that before the Russian armed forces reached the border of Dnipropetrovsk region, 29 kilometers remain from the Pokrovsky direction and 11 from Gulyai-Polsky. So this is the Pokrovsk direction and this is the Gulyai-Polye direction. So as you can see, the Russians are very close to the river of Dnipro. There is a very big panic among the Ukrainians, and as I understand, currently the Ukrainians don't know for sure what to do next. And now let's talk about the situation on the ground. And if you remember yesterday, during the previous video, we were talking about significant and very interesting and very crazy Russian assault operation in the direction of the village by the name of Shakhtarske. And also we got reports that the Russians began offensive operation in the direction of Bogayavlenka. As for the 25th of October, we got just one video. This is the video that show us the process of how the Russians were reducing till ruins both villages, the villages of Bogayavlenka and the village of Shakhtarske. After this significant and very powerful artillery preparation, the Russians began full-scale offensive operation that allowed the Russians to break through the Ukraine defense belt and to improve their position significantly. Now let's discuss in details what exactly the Russians managed to achieve as a result of this offensive operation. And the biggest number of updates are coming from the territory in the vicinity of the village of Shakhtarske. And today, pro-Ukrainian mappers, Deep State, published additional short, analysis, results of Russian attack, what exactly the Russians managed to achieve. The pro-Ukrainians are saying that the Russians used two waves of attack. The first attack took place in the morning of the 25th of October, and as a result of first attack where the Russians managed to reach the outskirts of the village of Shakhtarske, then the Russians managed to turn in the western direction, and the Russians began moving in the direction of Velyka and Novosilka. But the Ukrainians are saying that a few vehicles of Russian armed forces were damaged and destroyed, and the Russians decided to roll back. The Ukrainians are saying that during the morning attack of the 25th of October, the Russians were using up to 8 vehicles, including tanks, personal carriers. Later, the Ukrainians are saying that somewhere in the evening, the Russians began the second wave of attack, and as for the second wave of attack, the Russians were using up to more than 15 armored vehicles and personal carriers, and as a result of second attack, the Russians managed to improve their positions, but they didn't reach the village of Velyka Novosilka. Once again, several vehicles in the head of convoy were damaged and destroyed, and the Russians rolled back. But we have a lot of changes on the ground, and the most important, we have the video. So this is the video that show us how exactly the Russians were attacking. As you can see from this video, we have the significant number of armored vehicles, personal carriers, and tanks that were attacking the territory of Ukrainian forces. We have I don't remember when exactly the Russians were using the same number of forces. Furthermore, as you can see from this video, we don't see any resistance from the Ukrainian forces. We'll have lots of tanks. We have complete breakthrough of Ukrainian defense belt, and without any chances for the Ukrainian side to stand their positions. If we turn back on the map, the Russians were attacking on this video using two roads of attack. This is the first one. One of the geolocation was spotted exactly in this point, and another roads of attack took place along this line. So the Russians, as you can see, were trying to take the village of Shakhtarske in pincers and to outflank the Ukrainian strongholds that located between Zolotaya Niva and the village itself. As for different mappers, every single mapper show his own progress and his own vision of the situation. For example, pro-Ukrainians are saying that the Russians managed just to cross the river of Kashlygach and to establish strong positions on the Ukrainian side of this river. So this is the river of Kashlygach. It is a very small one, and pro-Ukrainians are saying that the territory between the Russian foothold in the northern part of the river of Kashlygach and the village of Shakhtarske itself is in the gray zone. But anyway, according even to pro-Ukrainian mappers, the Russians managed to reach at least this part of the village. So they managed to get here, and most likely somewhere here along the 0510 road, several vehicles were destroyed that forced the Russians to fall back. As for the neutral mappers, they show additional progress of the Russians, and this is exactly the territory that, according to neutral mappers, was captured by the Russians. We are talking about this river of Salona. And as for pro-Russian sources, according to pro-Russian sources, the Russians managed to take under control the southern farms of the village of Shakhtarske. So summarizing everything, we can make a conclusion that currently something like this is already under complete Russian control. And not like already, we can say that this information was published yesterday in the evening, so it's like the situation on the ground by the end of the 25th of October. Most likely during the previous night the Russians managed to improve their positions, and who knows, maybe the village of Shakhtarske was already captured by the Russians, and today we're going to receive additional statement by the Minister of Defense of Russian Federation. Anyway, let's compare the changes on the ground for the previous few days. This is the situation at the beginning of the 25th of October. As you can see, the Russian edge positions were located along the river of Zolotaya Niva, and this is the situation by the beginning of the 26th of October. The Russians managed to improve their position significantly, and the village of Shakhtarske is about to be captured. The same story took place around the village of Bogayavlenka. The Russians were also attacking using several roads of attack. First roads of attack, the Russians were trying to enter the southeastern part of the settlement, and according to information we have and according to pro-Ukrainian mappers, the Russians using the southwestern roads of attack, the Russians managed to enter the southwestern farms and to take this territory under complete control. As for the, as you can see, this is the changes on the ground that were published by the pro-Ukrainian mappers. The Russians, as you can see, according to this map, managed to take under control the stronghold to the south of Bogayavlenka, and the area in this farm is considered by pro-Ukrainian mappers as the gray zone or contested territory. The significant progress, and if we summarize everything from this direction as well, currently the Russians already control something like this, and obviously this is the significant progress of the armed forces of Russian Federation. And now we see that the village of Novosilka was semi-encircled from the west, from the east, and from the south. And today is going to be a very decisive day for the armed forces of Ukraine. If they can stand their positions, hold their positions, then they will be able to have additional week or two before everything collapses completely. But if Ukrainians are defeated today, then most likely they will not be able to hold their lines around Velyka, Novosilka, and around Kurakhove as well. Now let's move further. We have already discussed two roads of attacks, and there was the third road of attack from the village of Marinka in the direction of Ilinka, Elizavetovka, in the direction of the river by the name of Sukhi Yale. This video was published by pro-Ukrainian sources. And in this video, we can see how the Russian vehicles were attacking the Ukrainian positions and how the Ukrainians were trying to slow down and to stop the Russians. As for this direction, the Ukrainians of 33rd Mechanized Brigade were trying to repel another Russian wave of attack. There are a lot of vehicles, as you can see. Some of the vehicles were damaged and destroyed. And if we return back on map, the situation were taking place exactly along this line. And this video confirms additional Russian progress on the ground, and this is the territory that was captured by the Russians, that was adjusted in Russian favor during the previous, since the 25th of October. Now let's move and let's talk about the most important area between the village, between the Kurakhove Gornyak agglomeration and the city of Selydove itself. Today we have lots of very important updates, and as you can see, as for this direction, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 icons with the flags, which means additional Russian progress, including the progress that was confirmed by videos and geolocations. During the night, we received very important statement from pro-Russian sources that as a result of the successful offensive actions, the Russian units, the Russian army units, managed to take under control the settlement of Alexandropol. That was published somewhere in the evening of the 25th of October, right before night came, and this morning, right before we start making the video, somewhere at 9 a.m. of Ukrainian time, we got the video that confirmed confirms Russian control over the village by the name of Alexandropol. In this video, we can see the Russian soldiers that were moving through the ruins of the settlement, and the Russians were trying to find the better place to raise the Russian flag, and when they found, they established. And in this video, we can see the ruins of Alexandropol that left after their clashes. The final episode took place exactly in this area. Based on this video, we have adjusted the map in Russian favor, and the village of Alexandropol was captured, as you can see. As for the village of Gornyak, the situation is coming to an end. The Russians are about to capture the settlement completely. We have additional changes on the ground according to pro-Russian mappers, according to neutral mappers, and according to pro-Ukraine mappers. The settlement of Gornyak, now the Russians control around 50%. But due to the very bad situation in Alexandropol, most likely the next few days are going to be vital and decisive for the Ukrainians, and most likely the Ukrainians from the night of 26th of October to the 27th of October will begin the retreat process, and they will abandon their positions in the direction of the village of the settlement by the name of Kurakhove. The Ukrainians most likely are going to do this because a very bad situation for them is taking place between the villages of Izmailovka and Novodmitrievka. As we discussed, the Russians managed to improve their positions in this area, and that was stated by neutral mappers, but the most important updates are coming from the area between Sukurin and Novodmitrievka. Today, pro-Russian sources published a picture with the Russian flag above this building, and this is already at the outskirts of the settlement by the name of Novodmitrievka. So the Russians managed to take under control the first streets of the settlement, and the Russians are planning to move further. Furthermore, the Russians, as you can see, managed to improve their positions along the railways. So summarizing everything, we can make a conclusion that from the flower of Tsukurin is blooming already, and the Russians are moving here, and the Russians are moving along the railways. And if we summarize everything, we can make a conclusion that currently the Russians are planning to take under control everything that is located inside of this red line, and this is not something, let's say, impossible. Most likely the Russians will be able to complete this goal very soon, and as soon as the Russians reach this red line, after this moment, nothing from this cauldron will be able to escape the encirclement, because it's impossible. The Russians will be able to shorten the distance between the Kurakhove water reserve and the edge positions to the distance of less than 4 kilometers, and from this moment no chances for the Ukrainians. And the Russians are moving here. There are very heavy clashes right now, of course, and the Ukrainians will just make their final decision these upcoming 24 hours to stay there or to begin the evacuation. Now let's move further. Let's talk about the city of Selydove. According to different changes on map, currently the Ukrainians control just 20% of the settlement. The Ukrainians are withdrawing their positions. The Russians during the previous night managed to establish complete control over the southern part of the settlement. This information was confirmed, provided us by neutral mappers. Also, the Russians are finishing the clearing of the central part. This information was published by pro-Russian resources, and according to information we have, the Russians finished the cleanup of the northern direction. So summarizing everything, we see that the Russians managed to take additional 15-20% of the settlement just during the previous 24 hours. Also, we got the video that confirms Russian control over the coal mine of Korotchenka. This video was published also today, and in this video we can see the Russian flag in the eastern part of the Terikon of the West Gib, and in the next moment we can see the Russian soldier that left his stronghold. Just a second, this is the Russian soldier that left the stronghold, and after that the Russian soldier began waving with the Russian flag, showing that this territory under complete Russian control, so nobody should have any doubts about the situation on the ground. So this is the problems, and Selydove was captured, are about to be captured by the Russians, and this is the fastest battle ever. I'm talking about the settlements of these sizes, and let's see what is going to be next. But once again, the next few days are going to be the final days for the Ukrainian garrison on the territory of the settlement. Most likely the Ukrainians are about to retreat completely. As for the Pokrovsk itself, we continue receiving updates about very heavy clashes on the territory of the mine of Novogrodovka III. Just yesterday we have colored the southern part in Russian favor, today we colored the northern part in Ukrainian favor, and today we got another report how Ukrainians introduced additional reinforcements and reserves reserves on the territory of the mine. They managed to bring additional Bradley, and currently there are very heavy clashes exactly on the territory of this mine of Novogrodovka III, which means that most likely we're going to have to color once again this area in contested area or in Ukrainian favor. As for the Chasiv Yar direction, we haven't received anything special. The same story about the Siversk area. And as for the northern Kupiansk direction, we continue receiving updates of how the Russian aviation, Russian artillery were destroying and attacking the Ukrainian logistics, trying to reduce the number of forces the Ukrainians can use on the Russian side of the river of Oskol. We have reports that the Russians are about to answer the city of Kupiansk from the northeastern direction. So most likely during the next few days we're going to receive the significant number of updates from this territory as well. As for Sudzha direction, we haven't received anything special during the previous night. There are very heavy clashes but without significant changes on the ground. The sources are saying that the Russians are ready to begin the full-scale offensive, but the Russians are waiting for something. And that's it for this short video. Military Summary channel reminds we condemn any violence in the world. Thank you for watching. Subscribe to my channel, put your likes, show my Patreon, and have a good day. Bye bye.